Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Justice and Pieces YouTube series. Today I'm joined by Melanie. So first of all, Melanie, thank you so much for taking the time and speaking with us. Perhaps maybe you can tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Melanie. I'm a content and copywriter. So that means that I write all sorts of online content, whether it's your website, email newsletters, blogs, white papers, that sort of thing. The online marketing content that's going to get you noticed by your audience.
And maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you got into that. I mean, is there like a course or like what kind of motivated you to kind of go there?
I fell into it a little bit. I graduated with my law clerk. That was in 2006. From there, I was a legal assistant at one of the Toronto firms. I was in-house at a government agency. Um, I always enjoyed the law, but I didn't really love the practice of it. And so after I had my son and when I was done my mat leave, I didn't want to go back to a traditional 9 to 5. And so I kind of bounced around a couple of different things. And, somebody asked me to write a blog, and I'd always enjoyed writing. I'm good at it. And I thought, oh my gosh, why didn't I think of this before? And from there, I just dove headfirst into it, learned everything I could about it, read everything I could about it. And it's perfect because now I write for lawyers and legal professionals, and it fits so perfectly because I love the law. I don't have to practice it. It fits all those pieces.
Perfect. So maybe you could tell me a little bit more about the importance of that. And again, for lawyers and paralegals and some of my students who are hoping to be licensed and practicing later this year, is that something that they need to give time to? And what are some of the common mistakes lawyers and paralegals do with respect to blogging or content creation?
Yeah, absolutely. You absolutely have to be visible online. It's not optional anymore. Sometimes people have the misconception that, I'm getting all these referrals. I don't need my website to be fantastic. I don't need other content. But even when you're getting referrals, they're Googling you, they're seeing who you are. So it's having that presence online to let people know who you are, because you're not the only lawyer out there. You're not the only paralegal out there. So having something online that gives your audience a sense of who you are specifically, what your personality, your expertise, your special factor, whatever you want to call it, is going to make you stand out. Um, you have to be able to communicate that online. And blogging, I love blogging. I say blogging is like my first true love. It's great for so many things. It's great for establishing your authority. It's great for your SEO, for getting found on Google. Um, it's great for having a place to start with for recycling to other content. So, it's hard to be everywhere at once, but if you have a great blog, it's so much easier to turn that into an email, to turn that into LinkedIn content that you're not redesigning the wheel every single time. Um, so yeah, it's not optional in my humble opinion.
So on that, so I mean, that means people have to kind of get involved. Then what problems? I mean, like for example, hey, okay, Melanie's telling me it's not optional. I should do something. These days, I can just pop over into ChatGPT and put in some prompts, create a interesting blog post about I don't know what the importance of the duty of confidentiality, and they'll give me some points, copy and paste that into my blog. What's problem with that, or is there a problem with
Yes, there's a problem with that. And I'm not just saying that for my own job security. The problem with ChatGPT, the problem with any AI is that there is always the potential for inaccuracies. Always. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be fully up to date. It's never going to not require you to do the work to make sure it's accurate and factual, especially for what your audience is doing. You know what I mean? You have to be so accurate because, of course, these are heavier matters we're talking about. Um, the other thing is that ChatGPT can do good, but it's never going to be you. It's never going to be your voice. And so what can happen is if you're writing a blog and it's got this very ChatGPT voice, and then your client's going to meet you in person at some point, and there's going to be a disconnect there. You know what I mean? It's not going to sound the same, and it's very subtle, but it automatically creates this, I don't know, undercurrent of distrust that what I read online doesn't represent the person that I'm meeting in person, and it feels uncomfortable. So there has to be that human element. It's not to say that ChatGPT can't help. It's great for ideation. If you're not sure what you want to write about, it's fantastic for that. It's fantastic for giving feedback, right? Sometimes when you're writing something, you're so stuck in your own head that it's hard to get out of that. So having that kind of robotic objectivity is really helpful. But it isn't at the point where it can replace humans. It just can't.
So I'm keeping that in mind then. What should lawyers and paralegals be doing in terms of crafting their own voice? And again, what are some of the do's and don'ts you've seen with, so we've established, don't use chat gpt for final unrevised unedited postings there for the accuracy and the voice there, but what are some other do's and don'ts when it comes to content creation and blogs and stuff especially from the legal sphere?
Mm-hmm. A good quote that I saw said, when you go fishing, you don't bait a hook with the food that you like to eat. Right. So when we're writing things, when we're writing blogs and things like that, we're not writing it the same way that you would write a legal paper, the same way that you would write a motion. It's a different purpose and it's a different mindset. Right. So the things that you're going to find interesting and fascinating about, say, like the duty of confidentiality, right? The very technical nitty-gritty details of that are going to be so fascinating to other lawyers and other legal professionals, but not for the general public. Right. So there needs to be, you need to really understand your audience. You need to really understand what's important to them, because as humans, we're kind of a little bit selfish, right? When we're reading something, we want to make sure it's interesting to us, right? So think about your audience, think about what they need to know, what pain point you're trying to solve, and really focus on that. The other thing to really remember, and this is for anything online, whether it is your website or blogs or emails or whatever it is that people skim. Very rarely do people read word for word online. It's just, we just don't, right? So you're going to want to really pay attention to your headings and making your headings really clear. So it's like, okay, do I want to read this section while I'm skimming? Right? I'm seeing more often more mobile traffic on people's websites too. So making sure that it works on a smaller screen. Having a lot of white space, breaking things up, whether it's images, bullet points, that sort of thing. The format really does matter because of the way we read differently online. Yeah.
And with that, then how long should your posts be? Like
I'm going to be a lawyer right now. It depends. It depends. It used to be, especially from an SEO standpoint, that the longer the blog, the better it would do. And that's not what we're seeing anymore. People's attention spans are getting shorter all the time. And so it's a balance of, have you made your point clear? Have you given people, what they want to know about a topic? Without dragging on and on. I find that sweet spot of, okay, people are going to actually read this, but it's long enough to make the point, is between 750 and 1,000 words. But that's not set in stone.
and then with that formatted into headings, bullets,
Yeah.
pictures, things like
Yeah.
that, so it doesn't just look like 750 to 1,000 words of text straight through.
No, and it's even with Google and with SEO too, they really focus on headings for those keywords. So I find sometimes people will write a blog post and it's just like blocks of text not broken up. It's not the ideal way to do it. You really got to break it up.
And so what else about it? Maybe the actual content, right? So as you said, some people will come and perhaps ChatGPT is useful for kind of giving you ideas of what to talk about.
Mhm.
But what about, the some lawyers and paralegals may have this imposter syndrome, like why am I going to be blogging about, the Law Society's CEO's pay raise? Like, what do I know about it? I'm not
Yeah.
involved. Or what do I know about a case that came from the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court of Canada, and giving my 2 cents about it and how it impacts people? So what would you suggest, as a starting point of ways to wade in to having that blog?
It's, I mean, it's a very real feeling, and it's not to discount that in any way. Um, I think of, like, for example, the song Hallelujah, Leonard Cohen. It's been covered in every single way possible because somebody thought, you know what, we need another version of Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, and they've all done well, right? So it doesn't matter if somebody's already written the blog, like written on the topic that you're writing about. It's really not the point. If you're writing it from your point of view, how that ties into your experience, how that relates to what you're telling your clients. It's never going to be, it's never going to be the same as everybody else, and your audience is different from everybody else. And that's one of the things, even for who you're following online. Sometimes we think that we're hearing things over and over and over again, right? Like every mortgage broker feels like they're hearing about the rate drop, but that's just because they're following all other mortgage brokers, right? Your audience may not be following another person like you, and they may only see it from you. So it's it's okay to have the imposter syndrome, but not when it stops you.
What about in terms of, the quantity or the regularity of
Mhm.
posts, right? I mean, some blogs, there's like a bunch, 4 or 5, maybe somebody is listening, they're like, oh, I'm going to start doing this, and then after April, or like, like a New Year's resolution or something, and then you look at it. I have students, we do like a marketing assignment, and they got to look at paralegal websites, and they're like, they have a blog, but the last post was October 2021. um what should you do about that? Or should you just take it down at that point?
No, 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 no. Um, so if you're starting from scratch, consistency is great, and that doesn't mean consistency doesn't mean a lot in terms of quantity, right? If you write a great blog every month, then that is consistency. If you can do it every other week, do it every other week. It's what you're able to maintain over time, and do it regularly and make it into a habit, because there is that kind of feast and famine to it where you're like, I'm motivated, I'm going to write all the blogs, and then it's nothing. If you have a blog and it's been sitting there collecting dust, and your last post was in like October of 2021, it is a good idea to go back, review it, and repost it. That's a good idea to do no matter what. Google prioritizes fresh content, right? Which makes sense. Newer is better in that way. So it is a good idea, like even on an annual basis, going through your blogs, seeing what needs to be updated. Maybe things have changed. If there's data in there or statistics, are those still accurate? That kind of thing, and refreshing them.
And what about, I mean, we're talking blogs there, but I mean, what are some other ways? I mean, whether it's LinkedIn or X or other social media, is there a way to kind of leverage those differently? Or, I mean, I think you had mentioned at the start, kind of, you can use that content across different platforms. I mean, there's I think is it MailChimp or not MailChimp?
Mhm.
Can't remember they used to have this program
MailerLite,
where you can, what was that?
MailerLite.
Maybe. I can't remember. It'll come to me when we're done, probably.
Okay,
There was something where you could
like 3 in
post
the
it
morning.
across posts, three in one at the same time. And then there's like a paid premium service that
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I mean, is that as simple as just doing that, or do you need to kind of refine things
You
across different platforms?
you do need to kind of refine things across different platforms. LinkedIn, for example, leans more into storytelling. It's that seems Storytelling and statistics seem to do better on LinkedIn. Email marketing is a little bit easier because you can kind of take some of your blog and be like, hey, if you want to read the rest, here it is. I'm seeing a lot more people lean into email marketing over the past year just because social media has gotten a little bit unpredictable. Um, so it seems, and it's always a good idea to focus on your email marketing and your website because those are the things that you own. Social media, you're always kind of at the whims of the platform, and that is okay, but it's, you know, things change and you're kind of stuck with it. So having that sort of diversity is smart.
And how to kind of get I mean, obviously part of that is to get eyes to your website, but what else, I mean, in terms of even networking, right? I mean, how else do you kind of draw people into your content who may not otherwise know? Yes, there's SEO, there's Google ads and things like that, that kind of, but what else can you do? uh, is it as simple as just putting is it like Field of Dreams there? If you build it, they will come,
If you build
or
it, they will come.
or you have to do something differently?
um, it's a bit of both. And networking is always smart because we're people, you know what I mean? Like we need our network, we need our communities, but it also creates those opportunities for collaborations. You know what I mean? So say I'm a family law lawyer and you're a wills and estate lawyer, why couldn't we guest post on each other's websites? You know what I mean? And take advantage of each other's audiences in that way. Um, and focus on those areas that we kind of have in common, but our own individual expertise, right? And networking gives you those opportunities because you build those relationships and you can say, hey, I trust you enough to put you out there to my audience, right? Because that's a leap. Um, and it's talking about it. It's talking about it online, and it's consistently producing quality content. You know what I mean? It's not just like a if you build it, they will come. It's if you build something worth reading, they will come.
So in terms of that, maybe let's talk a little bit more about what you do, and you can share maybe, in terms of the kinds of work, or again, people have this idea, they're listening, they're maybe interested in doing it, but they say, well, I don't have the time to, as you said, have regular content, even monthly, or I don't, I'm a lawyer first and foremost, and I write like I'm making submissions to the Court of Appeal.
Yeah.
So who's going to want to read that in a blog format? But how do I kind of get the ideas and break it down for the audience that I'm hoping to attract to my website or to my LinkedIn page or wherever?
Yeah. So when I work with people, it tends to be that reason is that people don't have the time and frankly don't have the desire, right? And there's nothing more frustrating than staring at a blank page and just watching that blinking light and you know, it's just frustrating, right? And it's easier for me to write about your business because I'm objective. And it's just simpler that way. So I find when I work with people, it's a very collaborative process where you know people come to the table sometimes with, hey, we've been getting this question a lot from our clients, right? Like, or this is breaking new in our industry and we need to talk about it, right? Other times it's the research I'm doing on my end where it's what is coming up a lot on the SEO side, what keywords are trending in that way. So it's a bit of a back and forth of what we actually create. And it's all through conversation. It's amazing what comes out. Like people are like, oh, I don't know what to talk about. And then you start the conversation and it's like, you had so much to talk about. And so typically it's kind of a retainer thing. So every month, I sit down with you for an hour, ask about 1,000 questions, go off, write, schedule, post, and all you have to do is review it and okay it. So it's you can get a lot out of an hour when you're not doing the rest of the work. It works really well that way, I find.
And then again, how do you capture that voice, right? Now we were talking about, well, not going to AI, but now going to Melanie. So you have that hour, you have the lawyer, or I mean, I think you do. others, not just legal services,
Yep.
but predominantly legal services. But how do you kind of get that and encapsulate that and give it that authentic human voice that reflects the professional?
It's, at the risk of sounding arrogant, it's my superpower. I don't know how I do it. Um, I I listen carefully, for sure, and I take a lot of notes of what makes you you. And I think there's something about having another human reflect you that makes it more authentic, that makes it more real. But I don't know, that is just something that is one of my strong suits. I had a client tell me that she feels like if she lost her memory, I would easily convince her that she had written it. Um, because I don't know. I don't know how I'm just good at picking up that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously is important, right? Because
It is.
you can kind of have the topic, you can have the ideas. Here's the explanation of it. But if, as you said, there's a disconnect then between that and then the person they meet or the person that the other professionals engage with, they're gonna think, well, if it's not you, it's probably AI or something that wrote
Yeah.
it, and then you have that same problem.
And that's where that conversation does come in, right? It's a lot different than you emailing me and being like, "Hey, Mel, write 750 words about the duty of confidentiality." Right? There is that detail that comes out in conversation and that authenticity of what even you're focusing on in the instructions and in that conversation that kind of lends itself to better writing.
And any other things there? I mean, in terms of developing content that maybe we haven't touched on that you think we're trending in a direction where again, first of all, you're saying, look, this needs to be there, it's not a kind of option anymore, but more specifically, if you want to kind of maximize the return on content creation that will drive viewers to your website and to potentially retaining you or whatever your goal may be, what is it that needs to be kind of done that you're seeing better use of utilizing people like yourself or lawyers and paralegals doing it themselves uh, to maximize that kind of return?
I think it comes down to storytelling. Storytelling is so powerful. It's how we learn. It's in every culture. It's in everything we teach children even is backed by storytelling. So I think that sometimes, especially professionals, will shy away from storytelling and stick to very hard facts and very just the facts and only the facts. But for us to understand how it fits into our bigger lives and to convince me that, you know what, I do need a professional to help me handle this situation. You need to see it as something relevant and practical and part of my life. And so I think sometimes people shy away from storytelling and you really just got to lean into it.
And do you find, again, we were talking about your superpower there before, but do you find maybe having a
Sorry, that
legal,
was braggy. I
but
didn't mean to be.
having a legal background, I mean, gives you a kind of a little bit of insight as opposed to, I'm sure, there are other organizations, that content creation, copy,
Mhm.
writing, and so forth, that don't have the legal understanding, and even the Canadian one. I remember at one point, I don't know, I
Mhm.
when I was practicing more extensively, I reached out to like an American company. They put this like website template together. I'm like, well, these violate all sorts of rules of professional conduct because we're not allowed to say, you're the best paralegal or the best lawyer and things like
Mhm.
that. But what do you find in terms of having that touch that you've worked in the legal industry here, and how that kind of relates to connecting with your client?
Yeah, it certainly helps. It certainly helps me understand the concepts, because it's hard to explain something in a simple, relatable, understandable way when you don't understand it yourself, right? Like I can kind of make something up, but it's like when somebody's talking, it's you can tell when they don't know what they're talking about. And then I think also the other side of it is having that background in legal, especially I started out in litigation actually, is just realizing how important it is to get it right. Like I have a little bit of that healthy fear and responsibility of representing people online because I know how important it is and how detrimental it could be if something wasn't on the up and up. So I think it's having that background, it gives me yeah, a larger sense of personal responsibility behind it.
Now, Melanie, is there anything else you want to touch on about kind of the field there, um, in terms of again where we can be looking at and getting more or the right people to absorb the content that's being created?
I think it's having a really clear understanding of who your audience is. Um, and not just in a demographic way. Um, because I think we talked about this before that, Ozzy Osbourne and King George are both 74-year-old British people who live in a castle, but their problems are very different, right? So when we put people into those kind of demographic boxes, it's not the whole picture. So taking the time to really define who you want to attract very, very, very specifically, even in terms of what their values are, how their problems affect them, that sort of thing. What you put out is what you're going to attract, right? So really understanding your audience and really taking the time to sit down and define what you want that to be is going to make it easier for you to write to that person.
And now, Melanie, who is your ideal client? Who are you looking to kind of
Oh.
connect with?
Yeah, so my ideal client is legal professionals. I do like the kind of writing that is educational, that is informational, but that is also impacting people's life. In terms of who that is, I like people who are collaborative. I think if we're going on a values based, I do like people who are collaborative and who respect that it's a different skill set and appreciate that maybe it's not the blog they would have written, but it's going to be a good blog.
Perfect. And how can anyone reach you if they're interested in exploring, having you draft some blogs and things for them?
Yeah, so the best way to find me is on LinkedIn, and just search Melanie Ziltener. There's not a lot of us.
Perfect. So thank you so much for taking the time and joining us here this evening. Perhaps if you have any final words of wisdom to anyone that may be listening, whether they are lawyers or paralegals newly licensed that are thinking about adding content, or students that are just interested in perhaps, getting into this as a field that maybe they're interested, maybe like yourself, that they're interested in the law, but not necessarily in the practice of law. I mean, even I can put myself in that box there as well, being in
Mhm.
education. But and thank you so much again for taking the time and speaking with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I would just say writing's a muscle, so you just got to practice.
Perfect. So all the best. Thanks again, and thanks for everyone for tuning in. Take care.